The rain in Beijing that afternoon sounded like an orchestra with no conductor, chaotic yet strangely comforting. Xiao Zhang stood near the large glass window of the cafe, watching droplets race each other down the surface. He often believed that rain had a personality, talkative and honest, unlike humans who preferred to hide behind carefully chosen words. He smiled at that thought, stirring the untouched cup of latte in front of him. The foam had already shaped itself into a sad little island. Across the room, Lin Anya was pretending to read a book. Pretending, because the same page had been open for almost 20 minutes. She was fully aware that the tall man by the window had glanced at her twice, or maybe 3 times, though she told herself not to count. Anya worked as an illustrator, and cafes were her unofficial office. Yet today her pencil felt heavier than usual, as if it carried all the unsaid sentences inside her chest. Xiao Zhang finally gathered the courage to approach her table, holding his cup like a shield. "Excuse me," he said in a polite tone, "is this seat taken by your imaginary friend or may I borrow it?" Anya looked up, surprised by the gentle humor in his voice. "My imaginary friend just left for the restroom and never came back. You can replace him temporarily." He laughed, relieved. That was how their first conversation began, awkward, simple, and honest, like 2 children meeting on the first day of school. They talked about ordinary things, the bitter coffee, the unreasonable traffic, and how umbrellas in Beijing had a secret talent for disappearing exactly when needed. Yet beneath those light topics, both felt a strange pull, as if their hearts were already chatting loudly while their mouths were still warming up. Xiao Zhang didn't tell her that he was an actor whose face occasionally appeared on billboards. Anya didn't tell him that she was currently hiding from a broken engagement and an ex-fiancé who believed apologies were seasonal fruits, available only once a year. They chose to remain 2 normal strangers sharing a table during the rain. Outside, the city grew darker. The cafe owner played an old jazz song that sounded like a memory borrowed from someone else's life. Anya accidentally spilled a little coffee on her sketchbook, and Xiao Zhang quickly offered his handkerchief. "First aid for wounded paper," he joked. "Thank you, Dr. Paper," she replied, trying not to blush. They continued talking until the rain stopped, and when silence finally came between them, it didn't feel empty. It felt like a bridge still under construction, waiting for the next meeting to complete it. Before leaving, Xiao Zhang hesitated, then asked for her number with the seriousness of a man applying for an important job. Anya pretended to think for a few seconds, though her heart had already typed the digits long before her fingers did. That night, Xiao Zhang walked home feeling lighter than usual. His manager had scolded him earlier for arriving late to rehearsal, his schedule was a battlefield, and rumors about his career circled like annoying mosquitoes. Yet meeting Anya felt like discovering a small secret garden in the middle of a noisy market. Meanwhile Anya lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, replaying his laughter in her mind. She told herself not to expect anything. Expectations were dangerous animals, feed them and they would bite. Still, she couldn't stop smiling at the memory of how he mispronounced her favorite French painter's name and confidently argued that pizza should be considered a form of emotional support. The following days turned into a series of accidental meetings that were not accidental at all. They met again at the same cafe, then at a small bookstore, then near the river where street musicians performed terribly but passionately. Each encounter added new layers to their growing connection. Xiao Zhang discovered that Anya talked to plants as if they were relatives. Anya discovered that he was afraid of cats but pretended to be brave in front of them. One evening he finally confessed about his real identity. He expected shock, maybe excitement, or even disappointment. Instead Anya simply nodded. "So you're famous. That explains why your face looks like it has its own lighting crew." "You're not surprised?" he asked. "I am," she answered honestly, but my heart decided to meet Xiao Zhang the human, not Xiao Zhang the poster. Those words stayed with him longer than any compliment he had ever received. However, life enjoyed adding drama without asking permission. Anya's ex-fiancé, Chen Rui, suddenly returned from abroad, carrying expensive gifts and even more expensive regrets. He appeared at her studio like an unpaid subscription she never renewed. His presence shook the fragile balance Anya was trying to build. At the same time, paparazzi began to notice Xiao Zhang's frequent visits to an unknown woman. Photos were taken, rumors were cooked, and the internet turned into a noisy marketplace again. His agency warned him to be careful, reminding him that love and career often behaved like jealous siblings. One night, under a sky that looked uncertain about raining, Anya and Xiao Zhang walked along the empty bridge. The city lights reflected on the water like scattered coins. They were silent longer than usual. Sometimes, Xiao Zhang finally said, "My heart talks too much, and my mouth doesn't know how to translate it." Anya smiled sadly. "Mine is worse. My heart writes novels while my mouth only publishes short messages." He stopped walking and looked at her. "Then maybe we should learn a new language together." Before she could answer, her phone rang. It was Chen Rui's name on the screen, glowing like an unwanted ghost. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken fears, fragile hopes, and the distant sound of a street violin. Anya didn't pick up the call. Instead, she slipped her phone back into her pocket and whispered, "Teach me that language." Xiao Zhan felt his chest tighten with a mixture of happiness and terror. He knew their story had just opened its first complicated chapter. The rain clouds returned slowly, as if they too wanted to listen to what would happen next. Somewhere between the noisy city and their quiet hearts, a new journey began, messy, humorous, emotional, and dangerously beautiful. The bridge that night became a witness to many things that had no name. After Anya whispered those words, the air between them changed, thicker, warmer, and slightly dangerous. Xiao Zhan wanted to say something brave, something that sounded like a line from a movie script, but all he managed was a nervous laugh. "Teaching a new language requires a patient student," he said. "I'm terrible at grammar," Anya replied, trying to lighten the tension, "but I'm good at pretending I understand." They walked again, slower this time. The city behind them continued its busy life, unaware that two confused hearts were negotiating their future like amateur diplomats. Anya kept thinking about Chen Rui's name flashing on her phone, while Xiao Zhan imagined headlines that might appear tomorrow with his face and hers printed side by side. The next morning reality knocked on their doors without mercy. Xiao Zhan was called to an emergency meeting with his agency. The manager, a woman with the expression of an overworked general, placed several printed photos on the table. They showed him and Anya laughing near the river, entering the cafe, even arguing playfully about something no one else could hear. "You know how fast rumors grow," she said. "Today they say you're dating a mysterious woman, tomorrow they'll invent 3 children and a secret wedding in Switzerland." Xiao Zhan rubbed his forehead. "She's just someone important." "That sentence is exactly the problem," the manager answered. "Important people are dangerous for public images." Meanwhile, Anya faced her own battlefield. Chen Rui waited in front of her studio like a persistent advertisement. He brought flowers so big they looked like a botanical protest. "I came back for you," he declared with the confidence of a man who had never truly lost anything. "You came back because your new life was boring," Anya replied. She surprised herself with that courage. They talked for hours, reopening old wounds that Anya had carefully bandaged. Chen Rui apologized repeatedly, promised a future redesigned with better materials, and conveniently forgot the year he disappeared chasing his ambitions. When he finally left, Anya felt exhausted, as if she had argued with a ghost and lost. That evening she met Xiao Zhan again at the small bookstore. The place smelled of paper and shy dreams. He noticed the tiredness in her eyes immediately. "Bad day?" he asked. "Bad year, disguised as a day," she answered. He told her about the agency meeting, trying to sound casual, but worry sat clearly on his shoulders. Anya listened and suddenly felt guilty, as if her presence had dragged him into unnecessary storms. Maybe I'm trouble for you, she whispered. Xiao Zhang shook his head. If you're trouble, you're the kind that makes life less boring. They laughed, yet the fear remained between them like an invisible third person at the table. Days passed with the rhythm of uncertainty. Their relationship grew in small, honest pieces, late-night messages, shared meals, arguments about whether noodles tasted better with too much chili, and long conversations about childhood dreams. Xiao Zhan discovered that Anya wanted to illustrate a book about lonely planets. Anya learned that he secretly wrote terrible poetry and hid it like illegal evidence. But the world outside was not as gentle. Online comments became louder, fans debated fiercely, and Chen Rui refused to disappear from Anya's orbit. One afternoon he even confronted Xiao Zhan outside the cafe. So you're the actor, Chen Rui said, measuring him with cold eyes. Fame doesn't mean you can steal other people's stories. Xiao Zhan remained calm. Stories don't belong to anyone. People choose where they want to stay. The conversation ended without winners, only with heavier hearts. That night Anya found Xiao Zhan sitting alone near the river again. He looked smaller than usual, like a hero who had misplaced his armor. She sat beside him without speaking. Do you ever feel, he murmured, that loving someone in this world is like trying to protect a candle in a storm? All the time, Anya answered. He turned to her. Then let's be two foolish people protecting one candle. She smiled, tears unexpectedly warming her eyes. Humor saved them again. She joked that candles were expensive and they should switch to LED feelings instead. Xiao Zhan laughed so loudly that an old man fishing nearby complained. Yet beneath the laughter, decisions were waiting. Anya knew she had to close the door to her past. Xiao Zhan knew he must choose between a safe image and an honest heart. Before they separated, he gave her a small notebook. For your loud heart, he said. Write everything it says, even the nonsense. And what will you do with yours? She asked. I'll learn to listen. The sky above Beijing that night looked unusually clear, as if promising something it might not keep. Their hands brushed briefly, not fully holding, not fully letting go. Somewhere far away Chen Rui planned another visit, the agency prepared a public statement, and the internet sharpened its knives. Love, however, continued to grow carelessly, like a stubborn flower through concrete. The story was becoming messier, louder, and more real, exactly the kind of tale where hearts spoke endlessly while mouths struggled to keep up. Morning arrived like an uninvited relative, loud, demanding, and impossible to ignore. Xiao Zhan woke up to 30 missed calls, most of them from his manager, some from numbers he didn't recognize, and one from his mother asking whether he was eating enough vegetables. The internet, apparently, had decided to adopt his personal life as a national project. A new article had exploded overnight with a dramatic title, The Secret Woman Behind the Star. The photo showed Anya laughing while covering her face with his jacket. It looked intimate, honest, and completely out of context. Comment sections turned into wild jungles where strangers became judges, psychologists, and fortune tellers all at once. At the same time Anya was fighting her own war with the kettle that refused to boil and with her heart that refused to stay calm. She read the article while eating burnt toast that tasted like regret. Part of her wanted to laugh at how exaggerated everything sounded, another part wanted to hide inside the refrigerator until the world forgot her name. Her phone rang. Xiao Zhan's voice arrived before her anxiety could fully dress itself. Are you okay? He asked without greeting. I'm alive, she answered. My toaster isn't. He chuckled, grateful for her ability to joke even inside storms. I'm coming to see you. You coming here will create 10 more articles. Let them write, he said, unusually firm. My heart already published the truth. When he reached her apartment, he brought noodles, bandages for the imaginary wounded toaster, and a face that looked determined yet exhausted. They sat on the floor like two children hiding from thunder. My agency wants me to release a statement, he admitted. Something vague, something safe. And what do you want? Anya asked. He looked at her for a long moment. To stop speaking in borrowed sentences. Before they could continue, the doorbell rang like a bad punchline. Chen Rui stood outside with the expression of a man who believed destiny had appointed him as the main character. I need to talk to you, Anya, he said, then noticed Xiao Zhang and added coldly, privately. Xiao Zhang prepared to leave, but Anya surprised both men by grabbing his sleeve. Whatever you want to say, you can say in front of him. Chen Rui's pride made an unpleasant sound. He delivered a speech about second chances, about history they shared, about how fame would eventually swallow her happiness. Xiao Zhang listened silently, admiring Anya's calm more than any award he had ever received. I'm not choosing between two men, Anya finally replied. I'm choosing between my past and my future. Chen Rui left defeated but not finished, his shadow promised more complications. That afternoon Xiao Zhang had to attend a press conference for his new drama. Reporters attacked him with questions sharper than professional knives. Is the woman in the photo your girlfriend? Are you planning to go public? Does she know how many fans she might disappoint? He breathed, remembered Anya's laughter, and answered, she is someone I respect deeply. And respect is more important than any rumor. The internet reacted like a fireworks factory on fire. Anya watched the conference from her studio, surrounded by unfinished drawings. She felt proud and terrified at the same time. Her heart indeed talked too much, reciting his name like a stubborn poem. Later that night they escaped to the small rooftop above the bookstore, their unofficial island. The city below argued with itself in lights and horns. You were brave today, Anya said. I was honest, Xiao Zhang corrected. Bravery was just the costume. They shared cheap soda and expensive dreams. He confessed his fear of losing his career, she confessed her fear of losing herself. Humor visited them again when a neighbor's cat stole their fried chicken and Xiao Zhang screamed like an opera singer. Great hero of dramas, defeated by a 4-kilogram monster, Anya laughed. I'll add this tragedy to my autobiography, he replied. But the tenderness couldn't erase reality. His manager called, warning about sponsors withdrawing. Anya received a message from an unknown number telling her to stay away from him if she loved him. Love was suddenly wearing boxing gloves. Near midnight Xiao Zhang held her hand carefully, as if it were made of first snow. If things become too heavy, he said, you can walk away. I won't blame you. Anya squeezed his fingers. My heart doesn't know how to walk backward. They kissed for the first time, awkward, sincere, tasting of soda and courage. The city pretended not to watch. Unbeknownst to them, a camera from the building across captured the moment, already planning tomorrow's chaos. Episode 3 ended not with answers but with louder questions, the kind that made hearts shout while mouths searched for simple words. The photograph traveled faster than kindness ever could. By morning the image of their first kiss had become a professional wanderer, visiting every social media platform without asking permission. Someone even added dramatic background music and slow motion, turning a private second into public theater. Xiao Zhang stared at his phone as if it were an explosive device. I didn't know my lips had a fan club, he muttered. His manager did not share the humor. She arrived at his apartment like a storm wearing high heels. Contracts were placed on the table, warnings were delivered, and the word responsibility was repeated so many times it began to sound like a relative's name. Do you understand what you've done? She asked. I kissed someone I love, he answered quietly. Very illegal, apparently. Meanwhile Anya experienced the same earthquake from the other side of the city. Her studio inbox turned into a zoo, messages of support, messages of hate, marriage proposals from strangers, and one person offering to teach her how to disappear to Mongolia. She laughed, then cried, then laughed again because crying felt too organized. Her mother called from their hometown, confused but supportive. "Is he handsome in real life?" was the first question, which helped Anya breathe again. Chen Rui also called, of course, pretending to worry while secretly enjoying the chaos. "This is exactly what I warned you about," he said. "Yes," Anya replied, "and this is exactly why I didn't marry you." That afternoon Xiao Zhang escaped the agency battlefield and came to see her disguised with a cap, glasses, and a scarf that made him look like a confused vegetable. They met at a tiny dumpling shop run by an aunt who recognized him immediately but decided love stories were more important than gossip. "You look terrible," Anya greeted him. "You look worse," he smiled. Perfect match. Over dumplings that tasted like small circles of comfort, they talked honestly for the first time without decorations. "My world is noisy," he said. "Sometimes cruel." "My world is small," Anya answered. "But suddenly it has loud speakers." They considered breaking up for approximately 3 minutes, then rejected the idea together like two stubborn judges. In the evening his agency organized another press meeting, planning to announce that the photo was misunderstood affection between friends. Xiao Zhang read the prepared text and felt his heart protesting like an angry citizen. When the cameras turned on, he looked at the paper, then at the crowd, and finally at the single message from Anya on his phone: "Speak your language." He folded the script. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, "but I'm worse at lying. The woman in that photo is someone I care about deeply. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know pretending would be more shameful than loving." Some reporters gasped, his manager nearly fainted, the internet prepared new fireworks. Anya watched the live stream with trembling hands. "Idiot," she whispered affectionately, "beautiful idiot." The consequences arrived immediately: lost endorsements, angry investors, and a wave of fans who felt betrayed. Yet another wave, equally strong, supported his honesty. Love had divided the ocean. That night they met again on the rooftop. The city looked at them like an old neighbor tired of their drama. "You destroyed your manager," Anya said. "She'll survive. She has 3 black belts and no feelings." They laughed, then grew serious. "Are you sure about me?" she asked. Xiao Zhan pretended to think. "You steal blankets, you burn toast, you talk to plants, terrible candidate." "But yes, unfortunately sure." She hit his shoulder gently. Suddenly fireworks from some distant celebration colored the sky. They watched in silence, aware that their own war was just beginning. Chen Rui planned another move, the agency prepared punishments, and strangers continued judging from comfortable screens. Yet between all those noises, 2 hearts kept speaking louder than mouths ever could. Episode 4 closed with them sitting side by side, unsure whether tomorrow would bring sunshine or another storm, but finally brave enough to stop checking the weather. Fame, Anya decided, was like borrowing someone else's coat during winter, warm at first, suffocating later. After Xiao Zhan's honest confession at the press conference, her ordinary life officially retired without giving notice. Neighbors suddenly became amateur detectives, the bakery downstairs named a bread after her, and even the stray dog near her studio looked at her with suspicious respect. Xiao Zhan, on the other hand, was learning how expensive honesty could be. 2 endorsements withdrew politely, another cancelled rudely, and his upcoming drama promotion turned awkward, as if the project itself had caught a cold. His manager stopped yelling and started speaking very slowly, a sign far more dangerous. "You turned love into a public project," she sighed. "I turned truth into a sentence," he replied. Amid this chaos, an unexpected letter arrived for Anya, an invitation from a publishing house in Paris offering her to illustrate a major children's book series. It was the dream she had carried since university, the kind of opportunity people framed on walls. The problem was simple: it required her to leave China for at least a year. She read the email repeatedly, as if the words might change their mind. That evening she told Xiao Zhang while they walked near the river, their old headquarters of confessions. The water looked calm, pretending not to hear. "You should go," he said after a long silence. "That was too fast," Anya protested. "You're supposed to beg, cry, hold my leg dramatically." He laughed. "I'll schedule the drama for tomorrow." But behind the joke lived real fear. Distance was a professional thief, it stole feelings slowly and politely. Meanwhile Chen Rui smelled opportunity like a well-trained hunter. He contacted a media friend and began feeding stories that painted Anya as an ambitious woman using a star as a ladder. Headlines grew thorns again. Xiao Zhang wanted to fight, Anya wanted to disappear, and the internet wanted popcorn. One afternoon they hid inside the dumpling shop while rain argued with the roof. "Maybe loving me is bad for your career," Anya said quietly. "Maybe loving you is the only part of my career that feels human," he answered. The shop aunt brought them extra soup without being asked, the universal medicine for broken conversations. Pressure increased when Xiao Zhang's father called, a rare event. He spoke gently yet firmly about responsibilities, about how public life required sacrifices. Anya's mother, however, called to ask whether Paris had good markets and if Xiao Zhang liked spicy fish. Families, apparently, lived in different movies. The couple tried to enjoy small normalities, buying groceries like secret agents, arguing about whose turn it was to wash dishes, inventing code names for paparazzi. Humor became their umbrella. One night Anya found him practicing lines for a new audition, looking tired and beautiful under the yellow lamp. She realized how much he had already given up without complaining. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your dream," she said. "And I don't want dreams that require losing you," he replied. The sentence stayed awake between them until morning. Decision day arrived sooner than expected. The Paris publisher needed an answer. At the same time Xiao Zhang received an offer for an international film that could revive his shaken career, filming location, France. Coincidence smiled like a clever grandmother. They met on the rooftop again, carrying takeout boxes and too many thoughts. The city listened patiently. "Maybe the universe is tired of our drama," Xiao Zhang said, waving the film contract. "Or preparing season 2, Anya answered, showing her email. They laughed, then became serious. "Let's be brave in the same direction," he suggested. Anya looked at the lights, at his hopeful face, at the long messy road behind them. Her heart shouted so loudly that her mouth had to surrender. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's go learn French badly together." Somewhere Chen Rui read the news and broke a glass. The agency prepared new strategies. Fans continued their civil war online. But on that small rooftop, two people decided to choose each other without subtitles. Episode 5 ended with airplanes in their future and uncertainty still packed in the luggage, yet love finally holding a valid passport. Paris welcomed them with the attitude of a beautiful woman who knew she was being watched. The sky looked painted, the streets smelled of bread and expensive confidence, and the Eiffel Tower stood like a giant exclamation mark reminding everyone to feel something dramatic. Anya arrived first with 2 suitcases and one terrified heart. The small apartment provided by the publisher was located above a noisy bakery whose owner believed sunrise was a personal enemy. From the window she could see rooftops arguing in different shades of gray. She told herself this was a new beginning, then burned the first croissant she tried to heat and decided beginnings were overrated. Xiao Zhang joined her a week later after finishing several chaotic meetings in Beijing. His film crew welcomed him warmly, though the director warned that French schedules were like poetry, beautiful but difficult to understand. The first thing he learned was that saying bonjour with the wrong accent could accidentally start a philosophical debate. Their reunion at Charles de Gaulle Airport looked like a scene from a movie with a limited budget and unlimited feelings. Anya ran toward him, almost knocking over a confused tourist. "You look thinner," she said. "You look French," he replied, pointing at her striped shirt. Illegal transformation. Life in Paris quickly taught them new versions of themselves. Anya spent her days in a bright studio filled with colors, drawing characters that looked suspiciously like Xiao Zhang wearing imaginary hats. Her editor, Madame Lefebvre, was a tiny woman with the voice of a military trumpet and the heart of warm chocolate. "You draw love very loudly," she commented during the first review. "My heart has poor volume control," Anya admitted. Xiao Zhang, meanwhile, struggled with long shooting hours and a co-star named Camille who possessed alarming beauty and professional friendliness. The media immediately noticed the chemistry and began planting new rumors like enthusiastic gardeners. One evening Anya visited the film set carrying homemade sandwiches that tasted like heroic effort. She watched from a distance as Camille laughed at something Xiao Zhang said, touching his arm in a way that looked innocent yet fluent in French. "Jealousy is stupid," Anya whispered to herself. "I am very intelligent." She remained stupid for the rest of the day. To escape their growing insecurities, they created small rituals, Sunday walks along the Seine, competitions about who mispronounced French worse, and secret picnics under bridges where street musicians played songs older than their problems. Yet Paris also brought shadows. Chen Rui appeared again through an unexpected email to Anya, announcing he would attend a business conference in the city. "Maybe we can meet as mature adults," he wrote, which sounded like a threat wearing a suit. At the same time Xiao Zhang discovered that Camille had been cast partly because investors hoped to build a romantic narrative around them. The old battle between image and heart bought a French dictionary. One rainy night everything collided. Anya received a photo from an anonymous account showing Xiao Zhang and Camille having dinner with the crew, cropped carefully to look intimate. Minutes later Chen Rui called, offering to protect her from further humiliation. She walked along the river feeling like a misplaced character. When Xiao Zhang found her near Pont Neuf, her silence spoke before her mouth did. "Paris is beautiful," she said, "but it lies professionally." He understood immediately. "Nothing in that photo is real." "I know," Anya answered, "but knowing doesn't always win." They argued softly, the kind of argument built from fear rather than anger. A passing boat played cheerful music, completely disrespectful to their drama. Finally Xiao Zhang took her hands. "Listen to my heart, not to the internet." "Your heart needs better Wi-Fi," she tried to joke, tears betraying the effort. They made peace over terrible street crepes and a promise to trust more bravely. Still, both felt the test had only begun. Episode 6 closed with the Eiffel Tower blinking like a patient referee, Chen Rui's plane landing the next day, and Camille inviting Xiao Zhang to a private rehearsal that sounded too important to refuse. Love had changed countries but kept the same complicated accent. Paris in autumn looked like a painting that refused to dry. Leaves fell with the elegance of tired ballerinas, and the wind carried conversations in languages Anya still translated with her heart more than her dictionary. Yet behind the beauty, storms were lining up politely. Chen Rui arrived exactly as promised, bringing his well-ironed confidence and the smile Anya used to trust. He invited her to coffee near Saint-Germain, a place too romantic for such uncomfortable history. "I just want to see you happy," he said. "You wanted to see me obedient," Anya corrected. He spoke about stability, about how life with Xiao Zhang would always belong to public noise. His words were reasonable, which made them more dangerous. For a moment Anya felt the old gravity pulling her backward, to a version of life that was predictable and smaller. Meanwhile Xiao Zhang faced his own battlefield. Camille requested a private rehearsal at a studio overlooking the Seine. She was honest enough to confess her feelings, dishonest enough to disguise them as professional concern. "You live in two worlds," she told him. "One of them will eventually break your heart." My heart is used to working overtime, he answered gently. That evening the three lines finally crossed. Anya decided to visit the set unannounced, carrying pastries as a peace offering to her jealous imagination. She arrived just in time to see Camille hugging Xiao Zhang after rehearsal, a hug that lasted slightly longer than necessary. Anya felt her heart composing a tragedy without consulting her mouth. She left before he noticed. Paris turned blurry. She walked for hours, ending near the bridge where lovers attached thousands of locks as if metal could guarantee feelings. Her phone vibrated endlessly, she let it cry alone. Xiao Zhan found her at night with the help of a worried assistant and one stubborn instinct. She looked small against the giant river. You ran away again, he said softly. I was giving the story an easier ending, Anya replied. He sat beside her and explained everything, Camille's confession, his refusal, the pressure from producers. He spoke not like a star but like a tired man afraid of losing the only honest thing in his life. I chose you long before Paris, he finished. Anya listened, then showed him the message from Chen Rui inviting her to leave everything and start fresh. The two ghosts of their past and present stood between them. For a long time they were silent, letting the river argue on their behalf. Finally Anya laughed through tears. Our hearts talk too much, she said. Then let them finish the conversation, Xiao Zhan answered. They decided to meet Chen Rui together the next day. The meeting was polite, almost civilized. Anya thanked him for the history they shared and returned the last key she had kept like a souvenir of hesitation. I'm choosing my noisy future, she told him. Chen Rui left Paris carrying his pride like overweight luggage. The final test came during the film's premiere week. Producers insisted Xiao Zhan attend with Camille for promotional optics. He refused and walked the red carpet with Anya instead, not as a scandal, not as a strategy, simply as the woman he loved. Cameras exploded like excited birds. Questions attacked. He answered calmly, in 2 languages and 1 truth. She is my home, he said. The sentence traveled around the world faster than any rumor. Months later life settled into a new rhythm. Anya's book was published and children across France fell in love with her illustrated planets. Xiao Zhan finished the film and learned to balance fame with private courage. They fought about dishes, laughed about accents, and adopted a lazy cat despite his historical fear. On their last evening in Paris before returning to Beijing, they revisited the bridge where everything had once trembled. Do you remember when our mouths were cowards? Anya asked. They still are, Xiao Zhan smiled, holding her hand, but our hearts graduated. Fireworks from a distant festival colored the sky exactly like in episode 4 of their lives. This time no cameras hid nearby, no ghosts waited in cafes, no contracts threatened love. Just 2 people listening to the loud, imperfect language inside their chests. The story did not end with perfect certainty. It ended with choice, daily, brave, sometimes ridiculous choice to stay, to speak, to love. Because some hearts are indeed more talkative than mouths. And sometimes that is the only language that matters. The end.